I'm joined by a very diverse panel today. Pooja Dhingra, she's a pastry chef, macaroon lady, author, and entrepreneur. Dhruvil Sanghvi runs a logistic management software SaaS startup and LogiNext. Roopa Kumar runs Purple Quarter, which helps technology and product companies hire technology heads. So today we are going to talk about how Gen Z is reshaping the future of work. So Gen Z are those born between 1997 and 2012. How many Gen Zs do we have in the audience? Please give me a holler. All right, so experts call Gen Z a rebellious generation, born with internet, growing up with superheroes. They don't care as much about job security as they do about real growth at work and in life. They are the change makers. So Pooja, I would like to begin by asking you, as a millennial, a young entrepreneur, you've shattered a lot of stereotypes. So what are the rules that you have redefined?
Thank you. Congratulations, everyone. I'm really surprised there's not that many Gen Zs in the audience. For me, I think I'm still learning what the rules are to be able to break them. But yeah, it's for me, the lens that I see this topic is, I'm somewhere sandwiched between my dad's generation, which is the boomers, and the Gen Zs. And, my dad kind of was an entrepreneur himself. And I grew up looking at certain qualities of loyalty and, that generation that went with pension mil jayega, so that's all we need. Right. And for me, when I started work, I think a little bit of like purpose came in and why am I doing what I'm doing? We started with a team of 3. Today we're a team of 100. A lot of them are Gen Zs. And today I see them with like, why should we give you our time, energy, and effort? So I think that's the lens that I see this conversation with. Yeah.
Right. And Dhruvil, you are into IT, where we have plethora of young people in the workforce. So when looking for a job, Gen Z workers prioritize work-life balance, remote working, and flexible leave. So they also prefer companies that would support them in career development, allowing them to improve their skills. So as a startup founder, what have you observed?
I think first of all, I find it sometimes very difficult and scary to manage Gen Z. I think their expectations are very different, and I think I'm sure all of you either already have hired or will be hiring more and more Gen Z as you grow in your careers as well. We currently employ about 250 people in India and about 50 outside, with an average age of about 25. So a lot are like very new age Gen Zs as well. I think the biggest observation I have is that they are they are very well informed. I think the amount of knowledge and information they carry about their rights, what they deserve, is just way too high. I think highest that humankind have seen, has seen when they were 21, 22, and I think that affects their decision making. Number one, number two, it also distracts them a lot because they are excited about life, about career, and today they want to do X, tomorrow they want to do Y. So how do you really? I think what I have seen is that if you try to keep up your organization and culture, as we all talk about, if you try to keep up with them by constantly engaging them, it's a lot of work. Most of the, especially I being a CEO, I'm not really I feel bad when I have to spend a lot of time on constantly engaging people. I feel I want to sell more, I want to make more revenue and profitability and fundraising and all of it. But I think all this becomes an outcome of constant engagement to this Gen Z, and they do magic. So I think there are kind of two things, right? One, how do you really, they are very well informed, they are highly distracted. And if you constantly create framework and work hard towards it, they create magic for you. And that kind of helps you scale into other areas very quickly. So that's my observation.
I think our Gen Zs are very conscious about making their choices, right? And Roopa, can you give us the employer's perspective and what are they expecting from this upcoming generation?
Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate everybody here. Fantastic. I love the clothes. Pity we couldn't get them on.
I definitely should say that. I think great job done by Forbes. None of the previous people got it. So I think we're all jealous of the new batch.
Right. So I think the most important thing that we need to keep in mind is somewhere, I love the way the Gen Zs think because of the fact that I'm sure a lot of us here know Jeff Bezos and we know his regret minimalization framework. So it technically talks about that you do things that you never regret about when you grow older. Yeah, so when you're an 80-year-old, you're not sitting and thinking, hey, when I was 20, I wish I'd done that. So kudos to a lot of Gen Zs in the room and millennials who are actually thinking of doing things that the boomers didn't think of in the past, because super focused, doing one thing at a time. I kind of feel that it's extremely important for entrepreneurs or today's founders to actually realize that there is less inhibition from Gen Zs. So it's easier to actually look at what new roles can they actually go on and take up. So the amount of risk that they can take is phenomenal because the inhibitions are lower. They want to try new things. There's a lot of creativity at work. So I think entrepreneurs, founders, and the new aged employers are also millennials, and yes, some of us sitting here would agree to that. But important piece is even the new age CEOs are all millennials. So everyone's actually adapting to this fact that this is going to be wonderful. We're going to, like he said, there's going to be a lot of magic in the house because there's a lot of creativity at work. So it's going to be a wonderful place, I guess. In the next 10 years, I think we'll be sitting here and talking about the new set of things that we never imagined.
Right. So, how is it different, like when you guys started off and now you're seeing this Gen Z workforce in action? So, what's the difference and change that you see?
I think one of the biggest difference I see today is that I think especially Gen Z founders, they are able to offer a flexible and a remote environment to their employees in a much more easier way than the previous generation founders. I think we sometimes struggle. I personally struggle sometimes to understand this, hyper remote, hyper flexible work environment because I've never been into that. My ex-bosses never gave me that. And I struggle to understand how would productivity will come out and all this, old school stuff that comes out. But I've seen that, and I recently started investing in some of the new age founders, very young founders, and they are surprisingly comfortable, confident, and significantly better than I am at running such workforces and running such organizations.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I had one more piece that I'd like to talk about. I think moonlighting has also kind of helped a lot of, it's not just Gen Zs, but also us as employers, because of the fact that one becomes extremely happy when they're doing things that they love. So if I'm passionate about, we have few people in our team who are passionate about makeup, and they do videos around makeup. So it's interesting because the kind of work that we do at Purple Quarter is extremely serious oriented. We are talking to a lot of technologists, we're talking to founders. So it's very difficult for you to actually exhibit your right brain. So when you're able to do that, you're fairly more happier.
So you support moonlighting is what you mean.
Yeah, I think as long as there is no interference with what a company is currently doing, there's no conflict in any area, right? That you are supposed to expose yourself to multiple things that you can do. So I definitely think that's one of the areas which I'd like to talk about. Yeah.
I feel moonlighting has been around from a very long time, but now that we are talking about it, so I think, what do you guys think? Is it like going to be accepted now? Because we've seen a lot of layoffs also because of it. So,
you want to go first?
I think for me, being in the industry that I am, it's more challenging because it requires a very specific kind of, presence. It's not so much remote as other industries. And I think that as a founder, CEO, I also struggled with this a little bit. Initially, I had an employee who came up to me and said, oh, I'd like to go out and build a website for somebody else. And I thought about it and I said, I don't see anything wrong with that as long as it's not interfering with work today. But I was like, I would have to set certain frameworks so that, even I know how to navigate these conversations. And that's, certain kind of, that's what I've been thinking about and the help that I've been getting. What happens if someone comes and says, oh, on the weekends, I want to go bake somewhere else? And then there's a conflict there, but how do you resolve it? Is there a conflict? Those are questions that even I'm asking myself, and I don't know what is right and what is wrong. What do you guys think?
I think my view is I feel this whole moonlighting topic has become too much of talk of the town because I feel Gen Z is just overly sensitive. I think every next generation is becoming overly sensitive and woke, as we call. Hate me for it, but that's what I feel. And I feel, moonlighting is basically not about whether you can do any extra activities or make an extra buck or do freelancing. I think moonlighting is more about doing 2 full-time jobs at the same time. And I think that's, especially if you have something in your contract which kind of, which is already an exclusive agreement, you need to understand your, your ethical boundaries in terms of what you want to communicate to your employer. I think some people are very good at communicating. Some people actually hide it and do another full-time job. And I think that's when it became like this whole topic blew out when somebody's doing 2 full-time jobs. And I feel for somebody young trying to do 2 full-time jobs, I think it's not the best choice early on in your career because you want to let one thing compound. One thing I've learned in my career is that if you like go very deep into one area, the compounding result it gives you is significantly higher than trying to do 2 full-time areas. But at the same time, yes, everybody has a legal and like human right to kind of experiment, learn more stuff, and in fact, it's not even a right anymore. It's kind of a must-have for most people where they want to learn newer skills and not just stick to one area, but want to explore other areas as well. As long as they are like not too formal jobs in the same sector with competing firms, right? I think that kind of crosses the boundary, and that's what I think led to this whole blow up on this topic, I feel.
Yeah, I think one part that I'd really want to highlight on is as long as there is no conflict, I think moonlighting is a great concept. For example, there is a couple who's, I'm sure a lot of people follow them on YouTube, but the couple's actually into dancing, but they're both technologists. And they do this full time. And COVID kind of helped them also, nourish that talent a little more. And they quit their jobs and now they do dancing full time and they're happier, right? At the end of the day, I think it's about what are we happy doing rather than saying that, hey, you have to just do this or do that. So as long as there's no conflict, that's what I said in the first part of when I spoke about moonlighting, is as long as there's no conflict with what you're doing currently, and that is a value system. You can't change it through policies or you can't change it through, what one likes. As long as you have the value that you're integral to what you're doing right now, it doesn't matter what else you'll do on the side.
And I think if it doesn't conflict, even the individual doing it will be very proudly open about it versus trying to hide it. I think usually when people hide it, that's when they also know it's wrong. And I think that's when it becomes a problem.
I feel there are 2 ways of looking at this. Moonlighting happens, one is because people want to make ends meet, one, and the second is they're passionate about doing things. So I think Gen Zs are like, they're more into, they're passionate and they want to follow their passion. So they are working and they also want the organizations to support their passion. So yeah, and what can organizations do to, bridge this gap between, accommodating the needs of Gen Zs and, also making, sort of getting their work done?
I think what organizations can do is to educate and spread more awareness around it, because I don't think any organization is just, has a problem with somebody going home and trying a dance gig in their life, right? I don't think anybody has a problem with it, right? I think problem comes when, again, as I said, when there's conflict of interest, when you're doing another full-time job in the same sector, and most likely people, end up doing it unknowingly. So if people know what truly moonlighting means and what truly your rights are, and what you should do, can do, I think both organizations and employees will be will be very happy about it. And I think maybe media can also do has some role to play here, where if they also publish more kind of knowledgeable articles around it, I think that can help, because I don't think most people even know, like who are very young, what moonlighting truly means.
I agree. I think the other part that I'd really like to mention, the last bit that Dhruvil just said, it's not important that just because your friend's doing 2 things on the side that you have to do as well. Now that's another area of concern. We seem to have a lot of peer pressure. We seem to be thinking, hey, I'm just doing 1 thing, someone else is doing 3 things. Look at how successful they are. That's not important. It's not relevant. I'll really want to second the part of the compounding happens when you're good at 1 thing that you do. It could be coding, it could be art, it could be, fashion, it could be dancing, doesn't matter. As long as you know what you really want, and I think that's what we need to be talking about. Gen Zs know what they want. So,
Do they?
well, if I need to go back in time and think, if my niece today knows what she wants, she definitely knows what she wants. Whereas when I was her age, I was certainly clueless. I think the exposure that's there today, the digital world has become one of the prime reasons that one's so knowledgeable. And it gives you so much of power. Knowledge is power. So you have so much of power, you're trying to think of what are the other things that you can do. So...
Yeah, and I think post the pandemic, we have seen all these terms picking up, like great resignation, quiet quitting, moonlighting. So yeah, coming to quiet quitting, I was reading a report said that a lot of Gen Zs are, following this quiet quitting culture because they don't want to follow the hustle culture. So, what's your take on this?
Um, Honestly, this is the first time I heard that word. Uh, I didn't know, but I've experienced it, so now I know that's called quiet quitting. um, I think my view about I think this is that there's a sense of fear about not kind of quitting 100%, but you also have to kind of earn some income while you figure the next thing out. And that transition period is, I think, what people mentally, kind of develop in their mind. I think it's very, fair position to be in. Right? I'm sure all of us have been in situations where we were a little confused. We did some quiet quitting ourselves, maybe not towards our employee, but towards our employer, but towards ourselves. I think everybody goes through it. I think it's very fair. Of course, I think being more ethically communicative and open about it helps. And at the same time, as employers and organizations, they have to also be a little bit more accepting of a quiet quitting, because it's not, somebody's not doing it intentionally. They are also equally or more sad about it than probably you yourself
I think
as an
it's also
organization.
about they want to step away from this hustle culture and they don't want to be a part of it. They're like, no, this is our limit and this much only we can do. So, that thing is also there. That
I think maybe there's a boundary. There's one is like hustle culture, then there's work-life balance, then there is quiet quitting, right? Like I think work-life balance, like when we can kind of decide which scale we are talking about, but quiet quitting basically, as the word suggests, and I'm still new to it, I think should mean and would mean, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that it would ideally mean that like somebody's like not really giving their true 100% or even 50% to it. They're like kind of given up within themselves, but just there as a body. And I think that's unfair to themselves first, and to the person they are they are obligated to. But maybe I'll let them.
Pooja,
talk
you
more.
wanted to say something?
No, I just feel that with every generation, there's a lot of course correction that happens. I saw that with my dad's generation, and then growing up, I saw how that worked. I was like, okay, this is not how I want to live, and I want to, do things differently, which led to a hustle culture. And I think that it's now, it's a gap, it's a generation gap that we're seeing. And with Gen Z, they're like, okay, I don't want to do this. This is, and I think that that's how things naturally evolve. It's actually having empathy and understanding what this generation is about. I work with a lot of people that are between the ages of 20 to 25, so it's a great learning for me. I love the curiosity that comes in. I love that they're able to set boundaries. There are things that I learn from them that I wish I knew when I was starting. So I think it's been a great experience, and it's about learning where can the empathy come in to understand what this generation is going through. And so many times my mind is just blown. I'm like, wow, I could have done this. Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know if I can we take a quick vote on how many of you believe more in hustle culture versus a non-hustle culture or work-life balance culture? Just, I'm curious to know, because this is a topic that we all talk a lot about, and these are the most successful people of India, is what I believe, right, in their age group. So how many of you believe in hustle culture? And how many of you believe in a non-hustle or a work-life balance culture?
So in 10 years, we'll ask this question again, and then I think it'll course correct. So I think it...
Definitely. Great data point. I was just out of curiosity.
Yeah, get it. So one last question. As millennials, what is one piece of advice that you'd like to give to the upcoming Gen Z workforce?
I think my advice would be to Gen Zs is that I think this is the best time to be in Gen Z, because there is so many opportunities that are there in front of them. There is so much information. They are the most knowledgeable generation ever that humankind has seen. So I think they should definitely go and grab as much as they can. So which kind of reflects my hustle culture thinking also. So I definitely, my advice would be for Gen Z to kind of wake up as quickly as they can, do more for themselves, for the society, for the economy, whatever their purpose of life is. I think world has never seen more opportunities for young people than that are there today in today's era. So kind of go get it would be my advice.
I agree with Dhruvil, and I'd like to add to the whole thing of saying that the opportunity is definitely massive. The most important thing there'll be a shift is in terms of how most companies will see operators over people managers. That is what Gen Z will bring in. It'll be, you guys will be the domain experts at whatever you do. Because I see that there is a lot of culture of trying to understand the whys and hows rather than just saying, oh, this looks lovely. So I see that will be the major shift in a decade, that there'll be a lot more operators.
Completely agree, and adding to what they said about things, when you do things compound and you become better with things in time. So one thing I would really like to see is a little bit of patience, because I feel that growing up with the internet and everything is instant and everything has to be now, and I have to find my purpose today and I have to change my job tomorrow. So my only thing would be to just have patience, have the curiosity, but also have the patience.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Dhruvil, Roopa, and Pooja. Thanks for your amazing insights. Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us. Congratulations to everyone once again. Thank you.
Thank you.